Venus is often called Earth's twin. At first glance, that sounds reasonable. Venus is almost the same size as Earth. It has nearly the same gravity. It formed from the same cloud of gas and dust more than 4.5 billion years ago. If you were looking at the early solar system, you might even assume that Venus and Earth would become two similar worlds. But they didn't. One became a blue planet filled with oceans, forests, and life. The other became the closest thing to hell we have ever discovered. A world so hostile that no human could survive there for more than a few moments. A world hot enough to melt lead. A world where the atmosphere alone could crush a submarine. And perhaps the most disturbing part of all, scientists believe Venus may once have looked surprisingly similar to Earth. Which raises a terrifying question. If Venus became this nightmare, why didn't Earth? To understand why Venus is so horrifying, we first need to understand just how similar it is to our own planet. Venus is only slightly smaller than Earth. Its diameter is about 95% of Earth's. Its mass is about 81%. If you stood on Venus, ignoring all the other problems for a moment, you would feel almost normal. Gravity is about 90% of what we experience here. You could walk, you could stand, you could move almost exactly as you do on Earth. This is one reason scientists once imagined Venus might be covered in jungles, oceans, and perhaps even life. Before space probes visited the planet, nobody could see its surface. Venus is permanently hidden beneath a thick blanket of clouds. For centuries, astronomers could only guess what lay below. Some imagined giant oceans, others imagined tropical forests. A few even imagined civilizations. The reality turned out to be far worse. When the first probes finally pierced the clouds, they revealed something nobody expected. Venus was not another Earth. It was a planetary catastrophe. The first thing that would kill you on Venus isn't the temperature, it's the atmosphere. Here on Earth, the atmosphere feels almost weightless. We rarely think about it, but every second, thousands of kilograms of air are pressing down on our bodies. Fortunately, our bodies evolved to handle it. On Venus, the atmosphere is 92 times thicker than Earth's. That means standing on the surface of Venus is roughly equivalent to standing nearly 1 kilometer beneath Earth's oceans. Imagine the pressure of the deep sea. Now imagine experiencing that pressure without water surrounding you. The atmosphere itself becomes the ocean. A human arriving on the surface without protection would be crushed almost immediately. Bones would not shatter dramatically like in movies, but internal organs would fail. The lungs would collapse. Normal breathing would become impossible. And this is before we even talk about the heat. The average surface temperature on Venus is approximately 465 degrees Celsius. That is hot enough to melt lead. Hotter than the surface of Mercury. And Mercury is much closer to the sun. At first, this makes no sense. Mercury receives far more sunlight. So why is Venus hotter? The answer is what transformed Venus into a nightmare. And it begins with carbon dioxide. Earth's atmosphere contains only a tiny amount of carbon dioxide, less than 1%. Venus is different. Its atmosphere is about 96% carbon dioxide. This creates one of the most extreme greenhouse effects anywhere in the solar system. Sunlight enters the atmosphere. The surface absorbs the energy. Heat tries to escape back into space, but the carbon dioxide traps it again and again and again. The planet becomes a giant thermal prison. Today, Venus is so effective at trapping heat that its surface is hotter than many industrial furnaces. Yet scientists believe it was not always like this. Billions of years ago, Venus may have possessed enormous oceans. Some climate models suggest enough water to cover much of the planet. If that is true, then Venus and Earth once looked remarkably alike. But Venus was slightly closer to the sun. The additional heat caused more water to evaporate. Water vapor itself is a powerful greenhouse gas. More heat created more evaporation. More evaporation created more heat. The process fed itself. A runaway greenhouse effect. An unstoppable feedback loop. Eventually, the oceans disappeared entirely. The water molecules were broken apart by solar radiation. Hydrogen escaped into space. The oceans were gone forever. And once that happened, Venus had no way to cool itself. The planet became trapped in a cycle from which there was no escape. The result is the world we see today, a warning visible from millions of kilometers away. But somehow it gets worse. Most people have heard about the heat. Fewer people know about the clouds. Venus is covered by thick layers of sulfuric acid clouds. Not water clouds, acid clouds. If you could somehow survive the pressure and temperature, you would still face a sky filled with corrosive chemicals. Interestingly, the acid rain on Venus never actually reaches the ground. The lower atmosphere is so hot that the droplets evaporate before touching the surface. Imagine rain that disappears before it lands, an entire weather system trapped above an inferno. The atmosphere itself behaves strangely. A single day on Venus lasts longer than a year. Venus rotates incredibly slowly. One rotation takes 243 Earth days, yet its upper atmosphere races around the planet in only a few days. Winds high above the surface reach extraordinary speeds. The atmosphere essentially outruns the planet itself. Even today, scientists are still trying to fully understand how this is possible. The deeper we study Venus, the stranger it becomes. Then there is the surface itself. If you could somehow descend through the clouds, survive the pressure, survive the heat, and survive the toxic atmosphere, you would find a landscape unlike almost anything on Earth. Huge volcanic plains stretch across vast distances. Towering mountains rise from the scorched terrain. Ancient lava flows cover enormous regions. Evidence suggests Venus may contain more volcanoes than any other planet in the solar system. Some scientists even suspect volcanic activity may still be occurring today. If true, Venus is not merely a dead world. It is an active one, a planet still reshaping itself beneath its toxic sky. And this creates another problem. Every spacecraft we have sent there has struggled to survive. The Soviet Union achieved one of the greatest engineering accomplishments in space history through the Venera program. Several probes successfully landed on Venus. They transmitted photographs from the surface, images from a world nobody had ever seen. But even these specially designed machines could not survive for long. One of the most successful landers lasted just over 2 hours. 2 hours. That is all modern engineering could achieve against Venus. Imagine building a machine capable of crossing millions of kilometers through space, only for the planet itself to destroy it shortly after arrival. Venus is so hostile that even robots struggle to endure it. And yet, despite all of this, Venus may be one of the most important planets for understanding Earth's future, because Venus demonstrates something unsettling. Habitability is fragile. When we think about Earth, we often assume its conditions are normal. We assume oceans are normal. We assume breathable air is normal. We assume life is normal. But the solar system suggests the opposite. Mercury is a scorched wasteland. Mars is a frozen desert. Venus is a planetary furnace. Earth appears to be the exception, not the rule. A slight difference in distance from the Sun, a different atmospheric evolution. A few changes billions of years ago, and Earth might have followed the same path. The terrifying lesson of Venus is not that it is alien. The terrifying lesson is that it may once have been familiar. For decades, scientists viewed Venus as a failed version of Earth. Now they increasingly see it as a warning, a demonstration of how dramatically a planet can change, and how quickly habitability can disappear on cosmic timescales. This is why space agencies remain fascinated by Venus. Future missions are being designed to map its surface in greater detail, to study its atmosphere, to understand its climate history, and perhaps answer the biggest question of all. What exactly happened there? Because until we fully understand Venus, we may not fully understand our own planet. Perhaps the most disturbing fact is that Venus sits right next door. The brightest object in our night sky after the moon, visible to ancient civilizations, visible to us, a glowing beacon hanging above Earth. For thousands of years, humans admired its beauty. But beneath those bright clouds lies a world of crushing pressure, toxic chemistry, volcanic landscapes, and temperatures capable of melting metal. A planet that once may have had oceans. A planet that may once have looked surprisingly familiar. A planet that demonstrates how thin the line between paradise and catastrophe can be. And maybe that is the real reason Venus is so fascinating. Not because it is different from Earth, but because it isn't. It is what makes Venus truly terrifying. The possibility that under slightly different circumstances, Earth could have become Venus. And if there is one lesson hidden beneath those clouds, it is this: habitable worlds are rare, fragile, and far more precious than we often realize. The next time you see Venus shining in the evening sky, remember what is actually there. Not a beautiful twin of Earth, but one of the most hostile worlds ever discovered. A silent reminder that even planets can fall, and that sometimes the most terrifying place in the solar system is the one that looks most familiar.